The last radio hour of the week is upon us in this week of weeks, and I am joined by Hillsdale College's president, my friend Dr. Larry Arnn. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. All of our prior conversations, hundreds and hundreds of them, can be found at hughforhillsdale.com. We usually talk about old books and big historical events, but this week we're looking back at Tuesday, and I think it's going to go long, and therefore I'm going to play the rest of it on Monday. But Dr. Arnn, Good Friday to you, and tell me what you think happened.
Well, it's a landmark. I think Trump is a force of nature. I think he did all the things that it's not supposed to be able to do today in this controlled and managed age. And Vance, I think, was a tremendous addition to the ticket. And I think they've got an argument, and they ran a very disciplined campaign. And it's a very divided country. The election is close. And I remember from memory, I want to say this now, I think Richard Nixon might have got 61% of the vote against George McGovern. Reagan got in the high 50s. He never got 60. Trump is in the low 50s, and that's what we call a landslide now. But
what? First popular vote, which does not matter. As you like to say, the constitutional majority, it was a landslide, but he won the popular vote. Of consequence, do you think, Dr. Arnn, that he won the popular vote?
Yeah, it's because it's an important moral argument that underlies the Electoral College, by the way. It, too, has to have a basis in popular support for it to be legitimate. We don't have rule by birth here, right? And so the way the Electoral College is supposed to work, it never did work this way, by the way, but they thought that the state legislatures would pick electors who would pick the president, and they would have a real deliberation about that. Meet on a day. They got to meet. There's that court case in the 1960 election where they didn't meet, and so a lawsuit that Richard Nixon filed in Hawaii to overturn the results was rendered moot by a judge because the electors had not met on the day. Well, they picked the state legislatures because there's a lot of them and it couldn't be a cabal, and because the state legislatures are elected. So they have a basis in popular support. But the constitutional way, they like two-step and three-step processes, but also the Electoral College serves to spread the vote across the country. Because remember, the great thing about us is we're a really big country and popularly ruled, and so concentrated support geographically is not good enough. And so that's why it exists. But it too holds up the thing that we vote. And
now,
so
Dr. Arnn, before we get to specifics about how to translate what the event means and what the president-elect ought to do and all that good stuff, you and I are in unusual positions. We don't want anything. So we have a great deal of distance from the Beltway carnival of I want this job and I want that job and how do I get that? I don't even want tickets to the inaugural. I want nothing. I'm sure you're the same way. All I ask that be considered is that the president-elect look at Lincoln's first inaugural and consider borrowing the term, we are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies, and you know the rest. Do you think he could or would do such a thing? Because we are not enemies. We are citizens.
Well, we know two things. We know that is precisely what he did in 2016. He didn't want to prosecute somebody for political differences. We know the second thing we know is that on the campaign trail, and remember, the man has been convicted of 34 felonies, and he'd been prosecuted in several jurisdictions, and so he talked hard about that. And so I don't. Well, you only prosecute somebody for a crime that's known in advance and recognizable, and the facts are clear. And so if there are such things, then sure. But uh, it's hard to prosecute a political enemy, as by the way they have seen, haven't they? Because remember, the forest for the trees is that beginning in January 2016, they contrived a strategy, and January 2020, there was a riot and a mutiny and a rebellion and an insurrection. That's the word that they used. That attempt to overturn the election, and Donald Trump was behind it. And come to find out that isn't true. There was a big demonstration to which we have a right, and Donald Trump encouraged them to be peaceful. Everything he said that we have a record of in public and in private is be peaceful. And then some of them breached the Capitol, and that's trespass, and they should have been prosecuted for that. They are, maybe over prosecuted. Anyway, the point is that was their thing. And then the January 6th Commission, that was a cooked up job, right? Because Nancy Pelosi did not accept Kevin McCarthy's nominees for the commission. She picked her own.
The chairman is supposed to have been Jim Banks. The minority member was supposed to be Jim Banks, who is now senator-elect from Indiana, in one of the great twists of history. Nancy Pelosi blocked him, and now he is the senator-elect from Indiana.
And he got Liz Cheney, and it's now known in the House of Representatives investigation that they had a lot of evidence that they didn't put on the record, and it was exculpatory. And so it was a put-up job. And then Trump they invade his house for documents, having secret documents and mishandling them. And right after they did that, they discovered that Joe Biden had a bunch of documents in his garage near his sports car. That was a little embarrassing, but never mind. And they're prosecuting him in New York State and Washington, D.C., and in Florida, where Mar-a-Lago is. And they didn't have much success in Florida, but in New York State and in Washington, D.C., they were getting somewhere. Kamala Harris got 86% of the vote in Washington, D.C. this time. So all that's going on, and that's a major strategy to eliminate Donald Trump from public life and take his money and put him in jail, right? Well, here's the forest. They did not make the campaign about that. They mentioned it. Kamala, especially in the last week when she saw she was in trouble, talked quite a bit about it. But their ads were not really about that, right? And that means that they did that stuff and they advertised it and they took polls and they saw that it was not helping them. And so that's the first thing, right? That I began to be encouraged about the election, because I believe in being a hopeful person. And I didn't say it on the radio until the election's over, but I voted for Donald Trump, which is not a shocker to anybody, but we don't campaign for anybody on this program or at Hillsdale College. Anyway, I was hopeful about the election because of that. I just said, wow, look at that. They did unprecedented things, and they're not talking about them now. That's something. And, that had to do with Trump's winning the primary, too. I mean, his own gifts are serious. Very considerable. But nobody could get any traction against him because they martyred him with his base, and it looked questionable to much of the rest of the population. And
Amen.
So that's
now. I want to move to a consideration of the president-elect's resilience, because Richard Nixon was my second boss out of college. I knew him pretty well, and I ran his foundation twice, and I built the library for him out in Yorba Linda, and he taught me resilience because he was in Elba, right? He was exiled out to San Clemente, and he rebuilt his life and became an elder statesman again. Donald Trump is the most resilient political figure I have seen in my adult life, the equal of Nixon. I mean, Nixon wasn't shot. And then a second assassin didn't show up. And there is something to resilience. And I am reminded, we talk about Plutarch a lot. The greatest people are the most resilient. The people who stand out in history are all resilient. Whether I'm not comparing virtues and vices, I'm just saying the people who endure are the resilient ones. Comment?
Yeah. Donald Trump is, we knew when he started running, first of all, what a shocking thing in 2015 that it came to seem that Donald Trump was going to be a serious candidate for the presidency. Because you have to be old enough to remember, most people are, what he was a flamboyant businessman. Had a bankruptcy, had a lot of success, built a lot of stuff. And he built his business around his brand. And he would make various cocky statements during the 30 years leading up to him becoming president of the United States, in which he could see the country was going wrong, around themes that are at the heart of his political career now. And that he liked business so much, but he might have to step in there and fix it. He would say things like that. And
yes, often.
What an amazingly cocky thing to say. And then you find out that he is a national figure and he is appealing. And you find out that he works like a dog night and day, except when he's playing golf.
When he's playing golf.
His only nutritional vice is Diet Coke, if that's a vice. I like it too.
Oh, he does eat a lot of McDonald's, Dr. Arnn. He does eat a lot of cheeseburgers.
He's a very big man. I've been.
Yes, he is.
And he's a very large human being, and he got big hands, and he's physically imposing, and he just works all the time. And so
that's also very funny. Can I pause? I've had only a few encounters with him that are not public. And in one of those, he said to me, he remarked, "You don't know much about business, do you?" He said, "No, I'm not. I don't know. I'm a good lawyer. I can broadcast," but he's very funny.
Oh, yeah. He, one of my students was working for him, and he asked the young man, who's an important young man, about his job. And the young man, I'm not going to say his name, but the young man told him, and he said, "Is that an exciting life?" And the young man said, "Very." And Trump said, "Exciting like the life of Tiger Woods." This student of mine thinks that Trump would really like to be Tiger Woods. Apparently, he's a very good golfer. And
the president-elect is a very good golfer. I've had that attested to by people who've played with him. Yep.
And the young man said, "Better." And Trump said, "Why?" And he said, "Mr. President, we get to save the country." And Trump said, "That's right. We do live exciting lives, don't we?" I just love that story,
That's a great story. Now, I talked to Senator Thun earlier this week. I have no dog in the hunt for who is going to be the leader of the Republican conference. Senator Thun is one of the candidates. I hope our friend, Senator Cotton, is the conference chair. I think he's a man of the Senate. The word is out, and I haven't confirmed it yet. I haven't talked to Senator Cotton since the election. But the word is out. He doesn't want a job in the Trump administration. He's a man of the Senate, and he wants to stay there until he decides to run. And I hope that's true. But I also hope that no matter who is the leader, that they get their act together and go far and fast with urgency to crush the administrative state. And I mean that. I repealed the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978, mandate school choice. If you want any federal dollars in a state for education, you got to have school choice. I want them to shut down the Title IX craziness about biology and children. I want them to secure the rights of parents. I want the tax cuts extended, of course, in the military to be built up. I want NPR crushed. Not crushed. I want it defunded. I want so much that can be done. And Senator Thun assured me that no matter who wins, the GOP caucus wants a lot as well. Do you think if the House holds, and the counting will go on all weekend in California and in the next, if the counting holds, do you expect a lot from this Congress in concert with the president-elect?
Well, I expect politics to intensify now. And here's what I mean by that. First of all, I want to say one thing, lest we forget to say it. By these standards, by what's been prevailing in the last 30 years, this was a landslide. Elections are very close in America now.
Oh, yes.
But a second thing that's striking about it is how amazingly broad it is. So Trump, fighting as a central theme illegal immigration, got 45% of the Hispanic vote. He doubled his vote among blacks to 15%. That's low, but a lot better than they've been getting. And more among black men. The man-woman divide in the vote was not worse than it was in 2020. Better than it was against Hillary Clinton. Then he improved. I think he might have gotten 44% of the women, but that's up in the air right now. And the reason is there's this thing I'll refer the readers to. The AP does a 120,000 sample poll during the course of the voting season, which is kind of long now. And they ask, and it's what used to be exit polls. Exit polls have never been very good. This is at least a very serious effort based, I think, at the University of Chicago. And the data set is not available yet, but I'm going to download it when it is available because you can do what they call in polling crosstabs. You can see how many of this kind and how many of that kind. And some of that's on the AP website, but it's not detailed enough to be able to figure out exactly what percentage of the women vote. You can tell what percentage by age group the women vote there was. Anyway, it held, right? And Trump won the men and Kamala won the women, but it was close. And that means that that's what my never Trump friends have. How many times have I had arguments about this? This MAGA movement, Donald Trump's political support, is very broad and reaching far. And he has defied the advice of the established Republican Party, much of which has been against him.
Again and again and again and again.
And he gets more Hispanic votes and black votes than they got. And they say, we can't do these things because we'll lose those votes. And that seems to be simply disproved now.
And Dr. Arnn, I got to underscore something you just said. You talk with your never Trump friend. So do I. But the key point is we have them. And I don't think people understand that conservative people are not, by and large, consumed by politics to the point that they would sever relationships over politics. And we are birthed in the party of Lincoln, whose first inaugural is, we are not enemies, we must be friends. And do you think the left understands that at all?
Yeah, well, there's the left and the left. And the serious problem, like I've been, I've enjoyed reading about this election. It's like
so have I.
And so I've spent some time on it, and I think I see a theme, and that is the establishment went for Kamala, and the insurgency went for Trump, and the insurgency is bigger. And I think that phenomenon
bigger.
Yeah, well, it has to be, but it's also sort of a logical deduction. Like if there's a few who have outsized power, then by definition they're a minority. And
by the way, Michigan went for Trump. Michigan. Yeah. I am sorry that Mike Rogers, a very good man who I hope ends up at the FBI or somewhere in the government, I was so astonished on election night. I thought maybe Pennsylvania, in a great night, Wisconsin, I never really banked on Michigan. It's sort of been the Lucy football state, right? We don't get Michigan.
Yeah. Well, he got it in 2016. He didn't get it in
Right.
2020.
Right. It reverted.
And in 2016, if I remember right, Wisconsin was closer than Michigan. This time, Michigan was as close as any state. I guess they're still counting votes in Arizona, I think.
Yes.
But
And they will all weekend. They will all weekend.
Yeah. But, I don't know what it is. There's some states and they don't know how to count. I don't know what that is.
You have to resolve to be fair and fast, as Florida did after the debacle of 2000, and they are fair and fast.
Yeah. And add to that, fair is a synonym for transparent, right?
Yes.
In other words,
yes,
everybody's got to know everything. And in elections, secrets, especially regarding ballot counting, are dangerous. And there are too many secrets.
Yes.
In the COVID 2020 thing, right? I never claimed that the 2020 election was stolen. I've said consistently, you can't know. And the reason is, in Michigan, for example, they changed the election practices significantly, one party alone in the executive branch. And that happened in other states I read as well. And the legislative branch at that time was in the hands of the opposite party and the Republicans, and they didn't ask any questions about it. And so the truth is, you just can't know, right? It wasn't transparent. And then there were this Zuckerberg intervention. And what did that mean? And I don't think the facts are known about that even now. And that's
we don't know anything. We will never know what happened in 2020, other than, gosh, I hope we are never in that situation again. Dr. Arnn, I want to, before we conclude, and we're going to have a two-parter. This is going to go into Monday. I want this to be on the Friday program, though. I listen whenever it comes out to the commentary podcast, because the combination of John Podhoretz, Abe Greenwald, Matt Continetti, Christine Rosen, and Seth Mandel is wonderfully smart. I mean, they are very, very smart. I sometimes disagree with them and they sometimes disagree with me, but I listen to them. On the day after the election, they got together early in the morning and they were just, thunderstruck, as we all were, at the breadth and depth of the Trump triumph. And they called it Trump's triumph. And John Podhoretz observed that the left has been saying authoritarianism is about in the country. And John remarked, and I thought it was so smart. Indeed, it has been. And it has been on the left. Andrew Cuomo was threatening to arrest people coming into New York who didn't have a vaccine card. And the schools were closed. And he then added, and it was a laugh out loud moment. I was out walking and I laughed out loud. He said, and they enjoyed it. The left enjoyed the raw exercise of power over the lives of their fellow citizens. I don't know that we have yet fully grasped how mad Americans are about that. Do you think that's part of this vote?
Well, my favorite ad in the campaign was done by Make America Healthy Again. That's Robert Kennedy Jr.'s thing. And because I like that ad so much, and it's the one where she's bragging about putting mothers in jail. And it's kind of delicious. She's giving a speech and it's costing California $1 billion plus. The kids are missing school. I don't know exactly how that happens, but maybe it's federal money you don't get or something. And so she decided to prosecute mothers for truancy. And the point of it, and they have a mother on there who had a hospitalized daughter who was prosecuted and lost her house and lost her livelihood. And then it's interspersed with Kamala saying, it's my gang prosecutors and my murder prosecutors who volunteered to go and do this. And I told them, be really mean. And that will have the desired effect. And the point is, she's relishing that. And she, at one point, uses a gesture. She says, with a wave of my pen. And so, yeah, that's not good, is it? It Winston Churchill said this in the middle of the Second World War. He said, they said, what are we going to do about the Germans? And he said, there are 55 million malignant Huns, and some of them are killable, some of them are curable, and some of them are killable. Well, that's very hard talk against an enemy in war. He didn't talk that way about his own people, for whom he's a servant. He once, there's a wonderful account of this. There was a general strike in 1925 in Britain, and he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, and he published a newspaper because the newspapers were all struck against. Nobody could do it. So the government, put together a newspaper, and he edited it called the British Gazette. And he's given a talk about in the House of Commons. And Stanley Baldwin, sometime friend, sometime enemy, very clever man, who was prime minister, writes an account of the talk to the king. And Churchill says, Churchill's, he can really talk. He's good at war talk. And he says, and if there is unleashed upon the British people another crippling general strike, we will meet them. And Baldwin replies that the Labour Party leaned forward, getting ready to scream at him. And he said, with another British Gazette. See, such humor. Isn't that good?
Now, Dr. Arnn, we're going to wrap up part one, and we're going to do part two for Monday. But I want to wrap up part one. There are two things you often say, and I often quote you saying. One is Winston Churchill trusts the people, and the second is fundamental things are afoot. Well, we trusted the people, and the people came through from our point of view, the point of view of constitutionalists who believe in the genius of the framing and the glory of the Declaration. Now, the second thing, fundamental things are afoot, I don't think that ends. Now, in 2 or 3 minutes, I think it intensifies, agree with you. Do you think the Republican Party is equipped for what is a long battle, and to use their temporary opening, their momentary, if they hold the House, they get to do a reconciliation bill a year that requires a simple majority in the Senate, and I don't want the filibuster to go anywhere. Do you think they will seize the moment?
I would judge that they're better equipped to do that now than they were, because we've all been getting an education since 2015 and the emergence of Donald Trump, because he made politics intensify. And I want to say why. Everybody agrees in America that we have to have a strong central government and a strong local government. We should have stronger local government. And everybody agrees that we have to have an administration. The question before the House is, where does sovereignty lie? Is sovereignty in the expertise of the civil servants who are non-political, and that's used as a approbation, or is it in the ordinary common sense of free citizens? That's the debate in America, and that's been going on since the progressive era began to grow in America in the 19th century, that long ago. So that's what's going to be debated now. And I am particularly keen on Vice President Vance, because he's good at making that argument. And that's, I think, at its core, that's what the argument is going to be about. And I think we're really going to have that argument now. And whether the Congress will, the Republicans in the Congress, will back up President Trump, they didn't do a very good job of that in 2016 to 2020. They wouldn't, I don't think there's going to be any reluctance to build a wall now. But they wouldn't vote the money in a Republican.
I don't think they had any idea, and we'll talk about this Monday. I don't think the Republican Party of 2017 had any idea of the length to which the administrative state would go to overthrow a legitimately elected president by means surreptitious and deeply undemocratic. And I mean undemocratic in terms of the Brennan, Comey, Clapper ambush, the special counsel, the first impeachment, the nonsense. I had no idea.
Russia
And
collusion. And see, remember, it's always true that, it's not likely that all those names you just named are wicked people, although they've done things that look to me like illegitimate use of power. They believe something, right? They think that modern technical society, great global power, ordinary people have to be led, and we have to have experts, and we are the experts, and we're not running for office, and we make a sacrifice because we don't make a lot of money in our jobs, although a lot of them do these days. And most of them don't, though. And, we live under rules, and there's a big structure, and everything proceeds in a certain way, bureaucratically, which is processes, which means the will of no single person can dominate. That's the claim, right? And we're experts. This is what we do, and we spend all our time on it. And the citizens who have other jobs can't know as much about this as we know, right? That's a claim to legitimacy, and you can find it. Get the Hillsdale College Constitution Reader, and you can read it in the last long section of that thing, which is on the Progressive Era. They're making those arguments in 1888, and that's what's at stake. And remember, that's a serious argument, right? I mean, in Plato's Republic, the argument is the wisest should rule because they can do it the best. Now, it's a very curious book, as we're learning when we go through it, because Plato actually concludes that that's very hard to make work, maybe impossible.
and pause there because the time is such. I want to tell the audience, Dr. Arnn is going to continue to talk with me. We're going to put part 2 on Monday's program, and then we're going to return to Plato and the ongoing work of the Hillsdale Dialogue, which is to elevate and inspire, and that will be on Friday. So Monday, part 2 with Dr. Arnn, the election postmortem. Don't be mad at me. I know you want more of him, and I will give it to you on Monday. But thank you, everyone. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu, and we will make sure that these dialogues are part of that collection. Stay tuned. I am back now with Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. On Friday, I erroneously promised you that it would appear on Monday, but Monday is Veterans Day, and we always honor our wounded warriors on Veterans Day and help the Semper Fi Fund raise money. So it's Tuesday, and I told you yesterday I would deliver this today, but we recorded it on Friday. And so I want everyone to understand that. Dr. Arnn, I have not spoken to you, and nor do I intend to talk at length about this, but I quit the Washington Post 2 weeks ago, I guess now. And I'm done with legacy media. I have tried for decades to try and make it fair, but I'm done with it. And I'm not going to spend any more time on it. I'd like what your assessment of what the media was doing. Mary Catherine Ham said they were gaslighting us for a month about the Puerto Rico joke, about Donald Trump being a dictator, about fascism. They were gaslighting us. And do you think it can be saved? I'm done trying. I'm into alternative media now. I do my show. I do the Hillsdale Dialogues. I post and I direct people to podcasts. But what about the legacy media? Do you think it can be rehabilitated?
Well, first of all, it's not my habit, as our listeners know, to praise you, but you did a great thing there. You got up.
No. I'm not looking for compliments. You never do, but thank you. But I'm
telling you, I said that Hugh, he's meaner than hell. That was very good, and you flummoxed him when you did it too. Good for you. Little indignation goes a long way. Well placed. The point is, if you saw the weeping and gnashing of teeth as the results became clear, if you saw the horror on the face of some of the major broadcasters, there was no coolness. There was no dispassionate, let's understand what's happening here. There was in some of them, but in many of them, it was just open grief. And Lord, they've been calling the guy Hitler all week long, and not all week long, years long now. But remember, they also called George W. Bush that frequently. And, he's a killer, and
Bush lied, people died. I hated that.
yeah,
Bush never
yeah,
lied. He was mistaken, but he did not lie.
yeah. And was he
But
really? I
Dr. Arnn,
mean,
do you
yeah, it's good.
think
We're going through all that. Yeah. So yeah, the point
let, let,
is,
let me let me crystallize the question. Do they believe their own theater or is it theater? Because I am now genuinely confused. I think their grief was real, which would suggest they really believe that Trump is a threat to their freedom. And I just can't believe they believe that. That would reveal a level of ignorance so astonishing as to startle even me.
some of the writers, especially, are obviously highly intelligent people, and
Yes.
and to get where they are, they have to have lots of virtues of character and resilience, that word we've been using. Uh, and so, what I believe is they are persuaded of something, and that justifies them working to change the society. They're on a side, and they don't have that habit of, I mean, you and I both have the experience of hostile articles written about us by important
Yes.
people, and I have, to the best of them, whom I won't name right now, I said one time, you're bound to criticize us because we don't have enough black people, and also because we don't know how many we have. We actually have quite a few, but I don't know how many. Don't believe in that. I said, if you're going to criticize me for that, and if you're what you say you are, which is attempting to be honest, you should make my argument and then refute it, or get somebody to quote to refute it. But my argument is simple. If the human being is capable of rational thought, he must have an immaterial soul. That's an argument from Aristotle. And things that don't have matter don't have color. And so to think that is important in learning, if I did that, I would give up the central argument as a first step, and I will never do it. And I said the test of your article will be, do you put that argument in there? And she didn't. And
I know. They always fail. They always fail the test. And that leads me to my next question. We are going to turn a page, and you referred to this on Friday with the election of Senator Vance as vice president-elect. Donald Trump will finish his term, and then a new generation of leadership. And I don't know that J.D. Vance will be the nominee of the Republican Party in 2028, and you don't know, and there are many fine people in the party. But I know one thing, the generation has changed. Donald Trump is the last he wasn't even a boomer. He's old enough to be like Biden pre-boom, but the boomers are gone now, and they will not physically, but they will pass from the halls of power. You have been spending 20 years educating a generation of people who I hope flock to Washington in this administration and do great things. Do you think they will?
Well, I think that we're in, one of the great dramas of the American Republic, and it has just, because of the election, intensified yet again. And so we're going to have the argument now. And I think I said last time that Vance is important, and the reason is he's very articulate and good at making fundamental arguments. And I think he's going to make these. And so good on him. And the point is, what you can assure in politics, if you're brave and far-seeing and eloquent and live your life right, as the best statesmen are, and they're few, you can present the choice in clear terms. It's for the people to figure it out. And that's why you were so indignant with the Washington Post when you stalked out on them. Because you said gaslighting, and that what that word means is, what does it mean? It means not telling them.
You confuse reality with your fiction, and not to present facts, and to make other people think what are not facts are facts by turning up the gas and making them lightheaded.
That's it. And they it was a great movie about that.
Yes.
So Yeah, that's that. I think that they think that they are doing their duty, but that has changed the definition of journalism. See,
And I should
like
make a note here because I don't want to talk about the Post because I never talk about my old colleague. But Ruth Marcus is a friend of mine, and she's an old school liberal who went to Harvard Law School, who has really great journalistic chops. And she was caught unawares by that exchange. She had no part of it. I don't want her to be hit by the shrapnel. We have no problem with old school liberals. And my best friends are Democrats and old school liberals. I have a problem with the media and where it is right now, and I just don't know that it can be saved. I also am encouraged for 20 years. You've been piloting this institution. I just want to know if they're willing to go and serve, and it's not going to be easy. The left isn't going to go away. A lot of it is secular, and it's all that they've got. In the meantime, we've got Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party, Putin, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, lots of spies, lots of terrorists. We got problems.
yeah,
We need leadership. Do we have enough young leaders to do that?
I think I'm watching excitement for the moves of Elon Musk if he makes them, because he seems to really know how to run a railroad so well that he's going to run the dang thing to Mars. And he, I know him a little bit, and think he's a complete force of nature. I walked around the Tesla plant with him. My wife and I did, and one of his friends, a guy named Sam. And
okay, wait, stop. We got to pause and set this up. Tell us when you took a tour. I mean, what year did you walk around a Tesla? I've never heard this. I've known you forever. When did this happen?
It happened in 2017. In January.
My goodness!
I went to the White House to see Mike Pence, who's a buddy of mine, and a fine man who got put in a bad spot. I went in there. I hadn't been in the White House for 8 years. Wonder why. And so it's the first week, and I walk in there, and a bunch of Hillsdale kids are working there. There are hundreds who live in Washington, D.C. and work in the government. And they saw my name on the rota, and they came out, and we had a chat in the reception room in the West Wing. And we're just talking. It's fun. Oh, wow, look at you. What are you doing here? And he is staring at us. And I said...
Elon Musk.
Yeah. And I said, you are Elon Musk. And he said, well, I'm not. I said, matter of fact, you are. And he comes over and says, and who are you? And I said, well, I am the president of the greatest college on earth, and these are my kids. And he said, they don't look like kids to me. And I said, to you, sir, they are authorities. They are kids to me.
I've never heard that story.
Oh, I love that story. So anyway, he said, come see me. So I go out there. And what was it like? I mean, there were sleeping bags in the conference room, in the factory on the executive floor, which is not, it's part of a factory, right? The factory is very fancy and cool. You see pictures of it, but they're sleeping bags. And I stared at them, and he said, yep. He said, we're in manufacturing hell right now. And I said, Model 3. He said, yeah, make or break. And I said, well, I hope you make it. And he said, well, it's been hard because we had to figure out how to make a car.
I want to pause here. One of the most inspiring moments of the last many years is the chopsticks moment when Musk grabs the rocket. You and I had never seen that before, and we are older men, and we grew up in the space age, and we had never seen anything like that before. And for Elon Musk to be for you, and by the way, he stood with me during my recent controversy, which was nice. I don't know the man. I've only been in the room with him once listening to him talk, and I'm not an engineer, but I think you're igniting in me the sort of optimism I'm prone to. he excites me, and I hope they tap into that and harness that, because America can boom. It can just absolutely boom again if we unleash it.
Yeah, yeah. He's and see, I'll tell two more Musk stories that are my favorites. I asked him about this one. He went in. He founded the Boring Company, right? And that's a play on words, and very like him to think of that name. And why did he do it? He was at SpaceX, which is where, close to the airport in LA, where the freeways come together. And he sees that the freeways are all around him. He's looking at them, and they're all crowded. And he said, we went up for offices. We should have gone down. And so he goes in and he orders 3 largest German tunneling, boring machines. And by the time they arrived, he hired himself a bunch of engineers to make them faster. And because you gotta go fast. And so they arrive on big trucks, and he gets one of them off the truck, gets it set up, and says, "Let's fire this baby up." And they just go, right in the grounds of SpaceX. And I just think that's just perfect. That's
In California, it could be a little bit dangerous, but that's up to him to deal with the, under nuisance law.
Oh yeah.
If you do,
I'm not gonna give any testimony against him, but
no,
I don't think he got a permit, and so just, so, and then he takes over Twitter, and he fires. I think he fired more than half the staff,
or they left. They just didn't want to work for him.
I think he let them go, and
he did let a lot go, but some of them did did what I did and just said, "I don't want to work for you." But he has proven it was really top heavy, and because it's fine, and boy, they hate him now. He has made himself an enemy of the administrative state, and the administrative state, including the California Coastal Commission, wants to punish him. It's crazy. Government ought not to have an emotion of revenge, unless it's
There's this thing in Europe going on that the rulers of all things have a digital division, and they have threatened him about an interview he did with Donald Trump, candidate for president, on Twitter. And the threat is that they can fine him up to 5% of his global revenues. I read yesterday, of all his companies. So in other words, they're controlling the media. And I said last time that the fundamental question is, what is the title to rule? That's always, by the way, the fundamental question in politics. It's always that. If you're a political scientist, you learn to ask 2 questions every time you look at any nation to figure out how it works. And the first is, who rules? And the second is, how do they get to do it? In the name of what principle do they get to do it?
Huh.
And so in ours, equal souls, consent of the governed, equipped by nature to guide our lives and organize our government. That's the original idea. Very beautifully put in the Declaration of Independence. The new idea is humanity is capable of making progress through science, and so the scientist and scientific methods and those who apply them have a claim to sovereignty, that is to say, the legitimate title to rule. So when they call Donald Trump a dictator, often they mean, and if you just read carefully, they say this frequently, often they mean he doesn't follow the administrative process. He thinks he's the president elected by the sovereign people. That's the argument, see. And that argument has been going on in America for 150 years, something like that. And I've said before, I think on the show, but I'll say it now. This progressive idea of government got institutionalized in the popular branches of government with the election of Franklin Roosevelt in 1932. And so it's very instructive to compare the shape, just the big form of the government in 1930, a census year before he came in, with today. And in 1930, the government was 12% of the gross domestic product. Now it's 51% in 1930. And that's it. And remember, that's an adjustment between private and public activity. And in a liberal society, that is critical, right? Liberal society means you're free. You can do what you want to. Take care of yourself, be good to your neighbors, bear your
Obey
own
the law.
costs. Yeah.
Obey the law.
But so that we've taken, what is it, 12? It's we've taken 38% of the economy, the biggest economy in the world, and we've moved it into the public sector. And then we did a second thing. In 1930, more than 60% of the money raised and spent in government was raised and spent in cities and counties and towns. Now that number is under 20%. The federal government, if I remember the number right, was 23% in 1930, and now it's 63%. So we've moved the money inside the government farther away from the people and their direct needs. And so that's a revolution, right? And that is entrenched in, with a whole class of people who work in that. And it affects the academy, because the doctrines that justify that movement, that is, there has to be some principle behind it. Why is this a good thing to do, right? And that was born in the academy, and it tends to make college professors and colleges into rulers instead of monks. I'd like to say a really great college professor has something akin to a monk, because he's gotten deep inside something and he pursues it his whole life, and all he does is talk about it. And it's something eternal, and that's so not that anymore, right? And it affects business, because your government, by definition, now it's, half the economy passes through the hands of the government one way and another. In business, the economy, the government is in principle your biggest customer, and your biggest customer has regulatory power over you. And that means it affects industry too. And then and I want to just make the thing sharp. I've tried to repeat accurately the claim of a good that leads to this movement, which is we can make untold progress if we place everything in the hands of scientific methods. That's the argument. Here's the counter.
Yes.
It's in James Madison, and that is, government is the profoundest of all commentaries on human nature. If men were angels, no government would be needed. If angels were to govern men, neither internal nor external controls on the government would be necessary. And the thing is, what I believe, my argument, me and many people, is that they thought that the scientifically trained people in the government who have tenure and guaranteed salaries would not have any personal interest in serving anything except the public good. That's what they write that. There's a guy named Landis who writes that because they won't have any interest, they will only act justly. Well,
Oh my goodness.
And what? If you look up the top 10, I haven't done it lately, but if you look up the top 10 contributors in politics, public employee unions are very high. They're in politics, big time, right? Because they have interest, right? And that means they're human, and you don't have to say anything bad about them, right? I actually believe that the great majority of them are high-minded, and they think they're doing right. They couldn't keep it up if they didn't think that. And they have an argument, and the argument's a serious argument. It's been very powerful all over the world.
But I want to finish by talking with you. I've always said the Constitution matters because it protects our ability to speak, and it protects our ability to pray and to believe. And I believe the Christian gospel is true, and I want people to know it and hear it. And I do not want to be interfered in my ability to tell people about it. And I think that the administrative state is hostile to religious belief by virtue of what it is and the claims that religious belief makes. And religious belief is cabined. because of the Establishment Clause, but it is vibrant because of the Free Exercise Clause. I think that we saw the Catholics dramatically shift to Donald Trump. It's the one crosstab I have studied. It's enormous. Now, Joe Biden is a Catholic, and so he appealed to Catholics to vote for him in 2020, whatever their doctrinal differences on things like abortion, and it was not without effect. But there was no appeal made on faith by the vice president. I don't know what her faith system is. I just believe that faith matters so much to the Constitution that it's there to protect it. And I know what James Madison thought about religious liberty. Do you think, and this is a hard question, do you think our country is becoming so secular that religious belief is going to be endangered in the next 25 years?
Yeah, it is endangered. But that's what the argument is about. And you see, remember, this, human beings, Churchill liked to say about people, unteachable from infancy to tomb. We got charmed into some arguments that looked really great. And now we have experience with them, right? Turns out these people are people. And it would be better if they would obey. And the only change you have to make is that the bureaucracy, which should be trimmed in the way that Elon Musk has gone about trimming, it should be trimmed because it's very expensive and it interferes with the operation of our lives. But the most important thing is that it understand that it must obey the will of the people expressed in their elected representatives. You see, that's the thing. Donald Trump was elected president of the United States in 2016. The Constitution gives him authority from us, which is the authority under its lights, and therefore he gets to appoint the Attorney General. And the head of the FBI is selected and responsible to his appointed official, and that means indirectly to the president. James Comey did not think he was working for Donald Trump. You see,
I agree,
and that's the point. That's the issue. If we can get that right, and the main reason I rejoice about this election is we're going to have an argument about that now, and I think that there will be articulate arguments made on both sides, and that sets up for the people to figure it out. And it's going to be.
I want to close with. It's going to be intense and it's going to be ongoing, and we're going to do it again and again, both by direct conversation and indirectly by discussing the Republic, for example, on Friday. I want to ask you, though, a lot of colleges and universities set up therapy rooms, basically. They were worried about the fragility of their students as the election approached. I wonder what was the campus like on election night in Hillsdale, because I doubt very much you prepared one way or the other because you trust your students. But what was the atmosphere like at Hillsdale, where I think if anyone is listening, that send your kids to Hillsdale, please. If they can get in, it's pretty hard to get into now. But what was it like?
It's just the same. There's a poll in the college paper that shows that most of our students were Trump supporters. I think Trump got a plurality of the grown-ups. But it wasn't a divisive thing, right? Because there are two, I don't like rules, but there are two practices. One is there's no whining at Hillsdale College. So
no crying in baseball, no whining at Hillsdale.
That's right. I love to say that. There's no whining at Hillsdale College, and they, they buck up when you say that to them, mostly. And if somebody's in trouble, we got counselors and stuff. But if it was a whole lot of people, we couldn't manage it. They do. There is a group, by the way, that brings puppies onto campus from the Humane Society during finals, because finals are very stressful here, of which we're proud. And I don't mind.
Well, they ought to. They ought to be stressful.
We get back to work, and so yeah, that's did not think about that. It last spring when the many elite colleges became unable to function. Remember, they couldn't have class,
Yes.
and I was gone all that week when it peaked. When it hit big, it peaked a little bit later actually. And I thought, and I come back on Friday, and I said, I wonder if anybody's talking about that. And I hadn't sent anybody a note about anything. I hadn't told the security guys to pay attention. And I come back and I go in the dining hall, and it's lunchtime, and I look across and I listen for a minute, and I say, yep, this is still Hillsdale College. And then I had to, at lunch, I sat down with a bunch, and we were having a conversation. And I had to bring that up. Anybody think about that around here? And it wasn't on their minds. And they sort of looked up for a minute and said, yeah, we noticed that. So it's not, that's just stupid, isn't it? And
it's so healthy. It's such a healthy environment. It's the life of the mind as it's supposed to be done. And it's why Hillsdale is thriving and why Dr. Arnn gets my grudging admiration for all of his work over these 30 years. But I appreciate very much the extra time on Friday because we couldn't cover everything. And so we're putting on Tuesday. I want to remind everyone, everything at Hillsdale is at hillsdale.edu. Any new courses coming, Dr. Arnn, soon to the video?
3 or 4. And what are they? I don't know if we've released one on the totalitarian novels, but that's either just released or soon released. We're doing one on C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, I think.
Very good. Well, I hope that as the Trump transition team settles in, as they select people, I want them to go read to take the Constitution course. If you're going to work for Donald Trump, take the Constitution course.
I did talk to somebody from the transition team about education generally a month ago. And I got the impression that they're very orderly and they're thinking hard, and a lot of people are working on it. And then they wanted to know what I think about education. And I think the most important thing is to decentralize control of it. And because the learning is in the student, and the teachers and the parents help. And so authority and resources in education should be as close to that process as possible. And right now, more than half the employees in public education are not teachers, and that looks to me like a misarrangement.
I hope they wrote that down.
Yeah,
because the spending power, the spending power can make a lot of changes directly that are simply to retreat from the operation of the education system, to leave off with the bureaucrats micromanaging, never to do COVID again. But they can also tell states, if you want our money, you have to have a school choice option or support homeschooling. Because honestly, we've just got to get out of the business of demanding obedience from states. The federal government has no right to do that, but they have a right to condition their money. I hope that they do it wisely. Final, a quick question, because we're now out of time on the second hour. The Title IX controversy, I believe, was a sleeper issue. The girls and boys and girls sports. Do you think it was?
Oh yeah. I think a lot of people are alarmed about that. The rebellion against that broke into the national news in Loudoun County, Virginia, outside D.C., a blue place, and parents were very upset because they're changing the lives of their children without permission from the parents. And the children are minors. Who owns the children? See, that sovereignty issue I was talking about, that raises the question, who owns the children? Under the old doctrine of natural rights, the children own the children, and the parents act for them while they are minors, the people who love them the most and brought them into the world. In the new idea, children become something like factors of production. And the Republican Party has passed laws in education that imply that. as the Democratic Party has as well. So yeah, and the people don't, we need more kids in America. Everybody listen to the show. I don't know how many kids you got, but have some more. And
Amen.
and we need parents to be responsible for them, and then they can grow up strong and good and be humans. So
it's a sacrifice, but it is one well worth doing. And on that note, part 2 of the election edition of the Hillsdale Dialogue, nonpartisan throughout, is complete. Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. Thank you. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. All of our conversations, including part 1, can be found at Hugh for Hillsdale.com.